tonight with two brief videos that will perhaps give a good background primer on some parts of the industry. The first video will be focusing on the drilling process itself. So with that, I guess I'm going to ask that you bring down the lights and then we begin the video.
A variety of processes and expert, well-trained specialists are used to bring natural gas to the surface. Chesapeake works with these experts during every aspect of the project, while strictly adhering to all individual state regulations. During the drilling process, the rig is in constant operation 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for approximately 21 to 28 days. As an added precaution in some areas, a protective mat covers 2/3 of the pad site. Utilizing heavy-duty industrial-strength drill bits, a typical well is drilled in several stages, starting with a large diameter drill bit and then successively smaller drill bits as the drilling is advanced. After drilling each portion of the well, nested steel protective casing is cemented into place. This will protect groundwater and maintain the integrity of the well. Initially, and prior to moving in the drilling rig, a large diameter hole is drilled for the first 50 to 80 feet. Conductor casing is then cemented into place, stabilizing the ground around the drilling rig and wellhead, and isolating the well from most private water wells. In the Marcellus area, the freshwater zone extends to approximately 800 feet below ground. The freshwater zone consists of porous sandstone and rock stratus, containing water within the pore space of the rock. Chesapeake utilizes air drilling until the hole is advanced to an average of 100 to 200 feet below the base of the freshwater zone. This provides added protection to the freshwater zone. A series of compressors and boosters generate the air that is used to lift the rock cuttings and fresh water into steel bins. The rock cuttings are then disposed of within state guidelines and permits. The drilling equipment is retracted to the surface and stored for the second stage of drilling. To protect the integrity of the hole and to protect the surrounding deep freshwater zone, a second layer of steel casing, called surface casing, is installed and cemented inside the newly drilled hole and conductor casing. Cement is pumped down through the surface casing and up along the sides of the well to provide a proper seal. This completely isolates the well from the deepest of private or municipal water wells. A blowout preventer is installed after the surface casing has been cemented. The blowout preventer is a series of high-pressure safety valves and seals attached to the top of the casing to control well pressure and prevent surface releases. Next, a small drilling assembly is passed down through the surface casing. At the bottom of the casing, the bit drills through the float equipment and cement, continuing its journey to the natural gas target area, as deep as 8,000 feet below the surface. The drilling method employed below the surface casing uses drilling mud, which is a non-hazardous mixture based on bentonite clay or synthetic thickeners. In addition to lifting the rock cuttings out of the hole, drilling mud also helps to stabilize the hole, cool the drill bit, and control downhole pressure. A few hundred feet above the target shale, the drilling assembly comes to a stop. The entire string is retracted to the surface to adjust the drilling assembly and install a special drilling tool. This tool allows Chesapeake to gradually turn the drill bit until a horizontal plane is reached. The remainder of the well is drilled in this horizontal plane while in contact with the gas-producing shale. Drilling continues horizontally through the shale at lengths greater than 4,000 feet from the point where it entered the formation. Once drilling is completed, the equipment is retracted to the surface. Then, a smaller diameter casing, called production casing, is installed throughout the total length of the well. The production casing is cemented and secured in place by pumping cement down through the end of the casing. Depending on regional geologic conditions, the cement is pumped around the outside casing wall to approximately 2,500 feet above the producing shale formation or to the surface. The cement creates a seal to ensure that formation fluids can only be produced via the production casing. After each layer of casing is installed, the well is pressure tested to ensure its integrity for continued drilling. A cross-section of the well below surface reveals several protective layers: cement, conductor casing, cement, surface casing, drilling mud, production casing, and then production tubing, through which the produced gas and water will flow. 7 layers of protection. Horizontal drilling offers many advantages when compared to vertical drilling. Since horizontal wells contact more of the gas-producing shale, fewer wells are needed to optimally develop a gas field. Multiple wells can be drilled from the same pad sites. For example, development of a 1,280-acre tract of land using conventional vertical drilling techniques could require as many as 32 vertical wells, with each having its own pad site. However, one multi-well pad site with horizontal wells can effectively recover the same natural gas reserves from the 1,280-acre tract of land while reducing the overall surface disturbance by 90%.
Our second video this evening will examine the fracking process and what exactly that looks like.
In order to maximize the production potential of the well, the shale formation will be hydraulically fractured. In preparation for the fracturing process, the casing will be perforated in the horizontal portion of the well using tubing-conveyed perforating guns containing explosive charges. The perforated intervals are spaced approximately 50 to 80 feet apart and create a connection between the production casing and the shale formation. With the initial perforating complete, the tubing and perforating guns are pulled to the surface, and the workover rig is replaced by a hydraulic fracturing crew consisting of a number of high-pressure pumps and blending equipment. This equipment will pump a mixture of water and proppant, usually sand, through the newly created perforations in the production casing and into the shale formation. First, water is passed from a water storage impoundment into the blue working tanks depicted on this location. The water is then pulled into a hydration unit, which provides the ability to gel the fluid before it is transferred to the blender. At the blender, proppant and a small amount of chemicals that aid in the fracturing process are added. The blender transfers the fluid and proppant mixture to the pump trucks through the low pressure side of the manifold. The fracturing pumps increase the pressure of the fluid, sending it back through the high pressure side of the manifold to the fractory where it enters the well. The entire fracturing process is controlled from the treatment monitoring van. When the fracturing fluid reaches the perforations, pressure builds until the shale formation fractures, allowing fluid to enter into the formation. Additional fractures are created along natural zones of weakness in the shale. These fractures are contained within the shale formation, well below the ground. After an initial stage of fluid called the pad is pumped to create a fracture area, proppant is added to the fluid and is distributed throughout the newly created fracture network. At the conclusion of the fracturing treatment, the proppant allows the fractures to remain open so that the natural gas can flow into the production casing and to the surface. This completes the first of several stages in the fracturing process. This process is repeated by lowering and pumping down an isolation plug and perforating guns into the wellbore to complete the next stage of fracturing. This time, the tools are conveyed into the well by a wireline unit, which allows the fracturing process to proceed much faster and more efficiently. A lubricator is used to control the pressure of the well while the operation is taking place. On the bottom of the perforating gun, a composite bridge plug is placed to isolate the newly fractured zone. This ensures that the subsequent fracturing treatment is contained in the current zone. The perforating gun is again fired at roughly 50 to 80 foot intervals, creating a connection between the production casing and the shale formation. The The fracturing process is then repeated until all of the stages are completed. A typical shale well has approximately 8 to 12 stages of fracturing. At the conclusion of the fracturing operations, the isolation plugs are removed from the well and production can start. The produced fluids are diverted through a flowback manifold into storage tanks. The fluids are then recycled or disposed of according to state and federal regulations.
The next phase of our program is to invite each of our panelists to speak for 7 minutes, and I stress 7 minutes, about specific issues that relate to the Marcellus shale industry. There are students who are timing our panelists, so please be mindful of the student timer at the table in front of you. Our first panelist will be David Spiegelmeyer of Chesapeake Energy. Dave?
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor College. Appreciate it very much as well. Thank you very much as well. Let me start the program by asking, how many of you have natural gas in your homes? Many of you know the benefits of heating your home, cooking your food, drying your clothes, heating your hot water with natural gas. But what those of you that don't have natural gas don't realize is that natural gas touches your life every day. All steel, glass, plastics, chemicals, fertilizers, powdered metals, to pharmaceutical industry, some of our electric generation, and hopefully soon our vehicles will be powered with natural gas. We have a long history of producing natural gas here in our Commonwealth. Back to 1878 for the first commercial natural gas well in Murraysville, Pennsylvania. The first one began right here in Pennsylvania. Does anybody in the audience have an idea how many wells we've drilled historically in the Commonwealth and how much gas we've produced? We've drilled as many as 4,000 conventional or vertically drilled natural gas wells each year in the Commonwealth, producing about 25% of the natural gas we consume. The rest of that natural gas comes to us from the Gulf of Mexico and the Midwest through long-haul pipelines. So those of you that have natural gas, one of the quick benefits of natural gas is to provide independence in our natural gas supply here to the Commonwealth. When you look at your utility bill, you have the commodity charge, which is the natural gas itself, and the transportation component, or the demand charge on your bill. If you look at those two sides of the bill, right now the demand charge makes up a good portion of the delivery for your natural gas. That delivery charge, long-term, with Marcellus development here in Pennsylvania, will be reduced dramatically and impact your bill at your home. Again, we have a long history of producing natural gas here in the Commonwealth. Our demand in Pennsylvania is about 810 billion cubic feet of natural gas. We've generated normally about 180 billion cubic feet of natural gas through our independent industry. Right now, with only 3 years under our belt in the Marcellus industry, we've doubled that. We think in the next 4 years, we'll be a natural gas independent state here in the Commonwealth, providing the economic benefits that Pennsylvania will enjoy from that. I promised that I'd provide a little bit of education on the geology and geography of the Marcellus. First of all, not everyone knows exactly what the Marcellus is. The Marcellus was the organic mud and silt layer that fell to the bottom of the prehistoric lakes that existed in this region some 380 million years ago. If you think about the lakes and ponds that exist right here in this community, what happens in those lakes? Leaves and plants and fish and animals fall to the bottom of that lake. They form an organic layer. And 380 million years ago, that layer was the Marcellus. Today, it's heavy in organics. In areas of the Commonwealth, it could be as 250 to 300 feet thick. It goes down in the southwestern part of the state, down to about 50 feet thick, but it's very rich in natural gas. I'm sure many folks in this room thought tonight that when we drill for the Marcellus, we're drilling into an open cavern underground and trying to produce the gas out of that open deposit. Actually, we're drilling into solid rock. If I had a piece of the shale here in front of me, it looks a lot like your high school chalkboard that you had in front of you. Very dark, organic, rich shale that we're drilling into, and frankly, the difference and the reason why we've been able to produce this Marcellus economically is not because of the Marcellus itself, it's because of horizontal drilling technology. We've actually drilled through the Marcellus for about for quite a while. We've drilled deep. We had Trenton, Black River deposits here, deeper than the Marcellus, and we've drilled into those. And we showed natural gas into the Marcellus zones, but we weren't able to penetrate with fracturing enough to be able to produce that economically. Horizontal drilling technique has enabled us to do just that. Other key factors for the Marcellus is our proximity to high-consuming sectors of our economy in this country. 40% of the natural gas is consumed east of the Mississippi, frankly, in the northeast quadrant of the United States. The Marcellus is in an extraordinary location for providing the fuel for that economic engine of our country. Energy cost trends, when you start thinking about the fact that we send $1 billion overseas every day for imported sources of oil, and those of you that filled your tank up today probably have felt the pain of that. In a short period of time, we should be generating or fueling more of our vehicles on natural gas, and I'm sure there'll be a number of us tonight talk a little bit about that. 500 trillion cubic feet of natural gas is an extraordinary number. Let's put that in perspective and the supply trends for natural gas across our country. We've used about 20 trillion cubic feet a year in the United States. As I mentioned before, about a little less than $1 trillion here in Pennsylvania alone. We have a 25-year supply. If we can only produce half of the Marcellus, we have a 25-year supply. If we shut all the other consuming areas of the country right here in Pennsylvania, it's about the second largest gas field in the world, and we need to produce it properly. We need to produce it with rigor in our environmental laws, and we'll do just that. Environmental rules and laws, and we'll do just that. The economic piece of our industry, you've heard a little bit of this from the Lieutenant Governor. Nearly $1 billion this year will be generated in state and local taxes. If you add in the royalty revenue off of state lands development, it will well exceed $1 billion. 111,000 jobs here in the Marcellus alone. The benefits of a clean burning natural gas, dramatic reduction in our sulfur dioxide emissions, no mercury. Those of you that fish a lot in our area rivers know that we can only keep one fish in a lot of our rivers because of mercury deposits. Natural gas has no mercury in it. Negligible particulates, that's the dust emission that comes off the buses when you see them go by. We need to take a look at the state college bus fleet that's using 100% natural gas. We're going to do that in bus fleets here in the Commonwealth. We know the legislature, the governor, a number of folks in state government are 100% with us on that. It's a carbon light fuel, huge potential in our transportation sector. We only have about 150,000 natural gas vehicles in our country. I think we'll be there very soon on that front. Here's a look at what I just shared with you, about almost a 50% reduction in carbon, an 81% reduction in carbon monoxide, which is basically smog, nitrogen oxide, 80% reduction, sulfur dioxide, almost 100% reduction, 100% in particulate, and nearly 100% in mercury as well. Again, with time running short, I'll just share with you that natural gas will play a key role for our global economy in reducing pollution vastly across our country. Look forward to taking your questions. Thank you very much.
One of the reasons why we've invited our presenters to be so structured with their time is to provide opportunity for your questions to be answered. There are cards that are circulating out in the crowd right now with people who are collecting them. Whatever questions you might have, if you could please just jot them down and perhaps maybe raise them above your head. Somebody will be along to collect them shortly. Dave, I thank you for being right in the wheelhouse of the time allotted. Our next presenter is Tyrone Christie, Commissioner from the Public Utility Commission. Commissioner?
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor, and thank you, Maria, for the invite to be here tonight. It's hard to believe, but it's been about 20 years since I've last had an opportunity to be in Clarion County on a professional basis. I had the unique opportunity to be the developer of the Piney Creek Waste coal-fired facility, which is just a few short miles from this university. And as I was thinking about what we accomplished in Clarion County 20 years ago, and thought about how we actually made that plan happen, I found that there's some real parallels with what we're trying to do with the Marcellus shale industry. Back then, the technology to burn waste coal through circulating fluidized bed boiler was really an unknown technology, It wasn't quite proven technology, and so there was a lot of risk with the technology, but in that case, private industry was willing to step up and take the risk. And so here in Clarion County, what we did was we made a $100 million bet that we can make it work. And I think the rest is history. We've created an enormous amount of economic development, and we did it without any government subsidies to make it happen. And we proved that private industry on its own nickel could safely dispose and clean up of waste coal piles across the state. Here we have 14 of the country's 17 waste coal-fired facilities as a result of those kind of activities. So now we move to Marcellus Shell, and what people forget is just a few short years ago, Marcellus Shell wasn't exactly a proven venture. But there was some drillers out there that took the risk, and they proved after some number of attempts that the Marcellus Shell could be a very viable gas source for the Commonwealth. And as a result of that type of commitment by private industry, again on their own dime, no government funding, no stimulus funding, we're now sitting on what might be the world's second largest natural gas reserve. Before I go too much further here, I don't want to minimize any of the environmental impacts that we have seen and may see from the Shell activity. It's important that we don't take any shortcuts at the end of the day. We've got to protect the environment. But I think the good news here is that there's so much money to go around for everyone that we should be able to solve whatever environmental problems come before us. Most people, I think, readily understand that Marcellus Shell is creating tens of thousands of jobs, and there's billions of dollars pouring into the state. And we've probably all heard stories about the various property owners becoming millionaires overnight via upfront leasing payments as well as royalty checks. But what most people don't realize is that just how much we all are saving on our natural gas and our electric bills. If you look at where gas prices were in 2008 before Marcellus Shell really took off, we were paying about $5 billion more per year in Pennsylvania for our natural gas. And to bring that down to a consumer perspective, that's almost $700 per residential customer. And the other fact that not so many people realize is that your electric bill is driven primarily by wholesale gas prices. And again, if you look in 2008, before we had a lot of Marcellus Shell drilling, if those electric prices were held up in 2008 that we were projecting, your electric bill would have been about $11 billion more across the state. $11 billion more. So add into the $5 billion, you get $16 billion of money out of the pocket of Pennsylvania businesses and consumers. As an electric customer on the residential side, that would be about $750 per customer. So the explosion of Marcellus Shell really has added a lot more supply, and the gas prices have plummeted, and it's been good for all of us. But what I'd like to point out to everyone is that there are competitive forces on the horizon that can work to slow down this industry in Pennsylvania. Recently, the Rocky Mountain Express pipeline was built coming over from the Rocky Mountains. We still have a lot of gas that can flow up from the Gulf states, and someday New York will lift a moratorium on their Marcellus Shell ban, and gas will start flowing to Pennsylvania. And as the Lieutenant Governor said, now we have the Utica Shell, another shell layer, and this shell layer is much more broader than the Marcellus Shell. We also have LNG facilities on the East Coast that can bring in imported gas. So we have a lot of different competition, and it's coming from a lot of different angles. And in my opinion, Pennsylvania must keep its competitive advantage to encourage people to drill here and not go to other places. One interesting statistic that I found is that we've drilled about 2,600 wells, and maybe a little bit more, and yet 1,000 of those wells are believed to be capped due to a lack of infrastructure to carry away the gas. It's not hard to see a situation where we're starting to get flooded with natural gas. And so what I've been tossing around across the state in discussions with people is we need a comprehensive energy strategy that will involve some non-conventional end uses of this natural gas. And there's no question we're getting a tremendous amount of economic development, but I think we can do better at the end of the day instead of poking holes in the ground and just putting the gas on interstate pipelines. There are great opportunities as Dave mentioned, with compressed natural gas to convert vehicles. You can make natural gas for vehicles for about $2 a gallon right now. There's great opportunities for our industrial manufacturers to convert with cogeneration facilities for their own power supplies. And finally, there's so much opportunities by building in-state refineries to use the byproducts that are spun off from the processing plants that process the natural gas here in Pennsylvania. So my time is up, I see. Look forward to questions as we proceed during the evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Todd. Our third panelist this evening is Catherine Claver. She is the President and Executive Director of the Marcellus Shale Coalition.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Dave Spiegelmeyer asked about how many of you use natural gas. I'd like to ask how many seniors here are going to be looking for a job in the next few months? Got a couple? How many underclassmen are interested in some internships and really understanding what this industry may be able to represent for you in your career? How many underclassmen do we have here? That's great. Well, what I'd like to talk about today is building a little on the economics that you've heard about, but really putting into context what this development can do for those opportunities. And the kind of companies that are active in this industry are ones that may not come to mind. I encourage you to go to marcelluscoalition.org about us and understand a little bit more about the types of industries. But it's been fascinating to me to see the kind of companies that have come to this organization as the regulations are modernized, as additional issues are being taken on. For example, transportation companies, some right here in this part of the state, are very actively working with the industry to build and rebuild roads through communities that are going to be left with and have already been left with roads in better condition before or after than before the drilling happened. Is it an inconvenient process in the meantime? Absolutely, but we're seeing the kind of economic activity being brought to just that one area of Pennsylvania's infrastructure. Environmental consulting. I went to school down the road here, down Route 80, and I'm probably dating myself a bit, but it was before an environmental science degree was something that was a typical offering. Put that degree together, and now see that the environmental consulting firms that are joining the Marcellus Shale Coalition are those ones who have grown through the 70s, 80s, and 90s in this country because of the proliferation of environmental rules and regulations. So a lot of those types of companies. Water testing firms. We are seeing more and more pre-testing of private water wells, and there's about 1.2 million of them in Pennsylvania alone. Pre-testing of those wells to help the homeowners, the state Department of Environmental Protection, and obviously my members helps a lot to understand what kind of water quality is there before the drilling is done. And there are a number of water testing companies that have joined the Marcellus Shale Coalition because they are seeing that additional business. They're bringing on those additional staff people. Everyone from law firms to transportation companies and the environmental issues that we're dealing with on a regular basis, very proactively, all part of the coalition that my staff and I facilitate. This next slide is really kind of, you saw where some of the companies are located that are involved in this industry. This is showing you where those wells are and who's developing those wells from across the Commonwealth. And that's just the Marcellus. That's not the Utica that you've heard several speakers reference already. And that's in addition to a very vibrant, traditional, shallow well development industry that has been here for literally generations. The economic impact is frankly such a big number. It's hard to get your head around some of these numbers that are put out for Pennsylvania by researchers at Penn State University. But every shale play, whether it be the Fayetteville, the Barnett Shale, the Haynesville, all have some kind of a macroeconomic analysis. And some people like that, and those are good numbers to look at the full magnitude. But I think one of the things that is particularly notable from this study is what it does for Pennsylvania compared to other places around the country. And Texas being projected to be the only state that would produce more natural gas than Pennsylvania under the current circumstances by 2020 really starts to help you understand what this can mean in terms of the supply chain, in terms of the job opportunities, and the economic investment. The Marcellus multiplier is kind of a way that we've looked at the supply chain effects. And if you can see this, this picture, and there's one in the handouts as well, you think about the development of a well, kind of from 11 o'clock there, the site construction and preparation, and go around counterclockwise. Those are all the components of the development of a single well site. We were around 1,500 wells in 2010 alone, and you heard the number 25 being the approximate, or the number of Marcellus wells drilled in Pennsylvania to date since 2005. If you think of each one of those wells as about a $4 million construction project, that's a pretty big level of economic activity that takes bulldozers, it takes surveyors, quite a few companies involved in that development. The issue that obviously is getting a lot of attention, and rightly so, is environmental protection. I think that those of us who have not maybe worked in that part of the industry for years may not understand just how sophisticated the regulations are. We asked our representatives in Congress to go there. They've passed, responding to the public's requests. They've passed sweeping laws like the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, and the subsequent updates of those standards. OSHA, as well, at the federal level, has a sweeping set of regulations. And then at the state level, we implement those rules. And those turn into regulations, those turn into reports. Those are the reports that the staff of the member companies of our coalition are participating in a daily basis. I'm not going to steal the thunder from the regulator we have here tonight, Scott Perry, who's going to go into each one of these, I believe, in some additional detail. But I want to leave you with the kind of innovation that's going on here in this place and time in this part of the country is making folks around the world and certainly around the country take notice. We're doing the kind of breakthroughs that I think leave the kind of legacy that I know it makes me proud to be a part of this industry in this place and time. So I'll wrap up there and on to the next speaker.